dig my grave if it's mine to choose. Feels like there's nothing left for me to lose. I'll dig my grave. How many times I've gotta tell you I'm all caught up in bad advice? So many times I've had to hear you say, you know what you gotta do. I used to hang on to words that make my sting if you stung me first, but I passed upon a needing you to understand my views. It gets lonely, but I've learned by now there's more emptiness in the smiles you're forced to wear.
Hello, everyone. Greg Staley here from Diverge Media. Happy to have you again tonight. On the other side, we have our other co-owner,
Broderick Visser. Welcome, everybody.
So tonight we are talking about Fema and pastors, because there's actually a document where those two things link together, believe it or not. We're going to bring in some books. We're going to bring up the Oakes proportionality test again, and we are going to cover our dreaded article and why we actually released it. We've obviously taken a lot of heat, a lot of attacks. If you haven't had a chance to read it, I recommend you do. But again, we've been adamant since we started this company that truth falls where it falls, and that we're going to follow the truth no matter what. Stories that matter. That's what we're about. So before we go into it tonight, I want to read from a little book. I highly recommend it to our readers at home. 1913 by Oliver DeMille. It's all about the Federal Reserve when it was implemented. But there's something in here, and they're talking about vital foundations of freedom, okay? And their point was that back in the day when America was founded, the people were very, very aware of their rights, their freedoms, and they were extremely vocal. So it was hard for the government to take advantage outright. It was actually a process to brainwash and convince the people, and even then there was always constant bite back. But here's one of the things this book says, and I think it's a good point to bring up. We tend to let our freedoms slip away because they are tucked away in documents and policies that most of us don't ever read or deal with directly. Think about that again, okay? We do a lot of digging into a lot of documents here. When we talk about our article that we released that a lot of people are attacking us on, you need to know there was over 20 hours of research that went into that, okay? We didn't just come out and write something. We spent over 3 months with the line, and it was something that was said to us that made us reevaluate and go back and listen to everything we had heard. Now, I would not have released that article had I not found the mankind connection that Lamont belongs to. And the reason I bring that up is because the Mankind Project openly endorses the organization Black Lives Matter. We at Diverge Media, when we seen this, we started digging into Mankind Project, and then we listened to the things that were said. And I'd like to liken it to this. If you were interviewing a teacher to teach children, and they said, I want to be violent. I want to be angry. In fact, I think about doing these bad things. Would you hire that teacher to teach children after that? No. Absolutely not. If somebody's leading a civil liberties movement with thousands upon thousands, millions of Canadians, hoping that that brings rights, liberties, and freedoms to the forefront, and you have spent over 10, 15 years in an organization that openly endorses Black Lives Matter, and then you say, I want to drive a car through the CBC, I want to be violent, I want to be angry, but I transmute that fact, it doesn't discount everything you said before it, especially when we add in the history. It is a difficult thing. We will go through it a little bit more tonight, but ultimately the reason this article was written, and I understand we've gotten a ton of backlash on it, But the reason the article was written is because character and integrity matter. A lot of people are disillusioned, I believe, by the cult of personality involved. I am no longer disillusioned.
Right.
I looked at this very, again, over 20 hours of research into this, over 5 hours of actually writing it, and people are criticizing a 2-minute video meant to get you to click the actual article and read. Can you paste the link to the article? I haven't seen it yet. Absolutely, Mike. I know who you are, and I know you're probably out there potentially even relaying information out. But anyways, this is what we've noticed is that our article got shared in certain groups by certain people to basically bring people in to intentionally attack it. Now, I don't care. We're going to weather the storm, and I'm letting you know character and integrity matter to me more than my popularity. Now, for people saying that we did this for clicks, likes, and views, it would be much more convenient for me to have shut my fucking mouth, pardon my language, and said nothing at all. We could still be interviewing and showing up to these events with no concern. We said, listen, 15 years of research I went into on the background, and I go, well, there's mankind. Go, okay, that's kind of weird. But then it was the Black Lives Matter stuff on top of the violent statements. And I said, too much there to ignore. Again, if a teacher said, I want to be violent, I want to do these things, but I transmute that, you wouldn't hire them to be a teacher. If somebody's leading a civil liberties movement with thousands of people in the street almost every Saturday, and they say, I want to be violent, I want to be angry, but I transmute that fact, it doesn't discount everything that was said before it. I seriously haven't seen what you're talking about. Okay, Mike, check it out. Let me know what you think. I know you're a pretty reasonable man. Ultimately, I know that we're being attacked. People think we took it out of context. If you go read our article, we actually did quote, video of the quote, quote, video of the quote, quote, video of the quote. I was very careful when I wrote this article because I don't want to destroy this movement. I have 4 freaking months of building this business, standing on liberty, rights, and freedoms, and to turn around and attack me and say I don't have any character integrity baffles me. If you don't see an issue with this, again, that is on you. I am concerned about the longevity of the movement. Hence why I could not in good conscience ignore the volume of evidence that suggested maybe that wasn't a good idea to be blindly following someone who openly endorses that. And for the record, we sent out 4 comments asking Mr. Daigle to openly, right, Broderick? To openly say that they have no association with Black Lives Matter and denounce the organization, not the people, because obviously Black Lives Matter, but the organization is an issue. In coordination or in combination with the other things that were said, that was the ultimate reason the article was written. Moving on. Let's get into some actual stuff we want to cover. Okay.
I think one thing people don't realize is how many views we actually got from sharing articles through their pages.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gone. And I mean, it is what it is. Whatever.
This is the thing, right? People say
truth falls,
you guys,
falls.
That's exactly it. Hey, you guys did this for views. We've gotten less views on this. I've gotten like 150 amount of views on my other articles. You guys are full of shit. Like, you don't even know. I see the stats every day in front of me. This article is so underperforming. Okay? And I took so much freaking heat. And I don't care. You want to know why? Because my heart matters more to me. My character and my integrity matter more than being liked by a bunch of people. And I will continue to do that. It's stories that matter no matter what, regardless of the cost. And that's why you should follow us. Let's go into some stuff that we've been covering. Gonna pull it up don't. But we covered I pulled up, we covered an article today on the, I got the federal isolation camps coming soon across Canada, ? Okay, so we went through service provider for federal quarantine isolation sites 6D112-202-772/8. Big boring, but you can type that in, look this up yourself, or go to our article and it's linked there. Let's talk about it being deeply concerning. Main reasons being the generality of the language and the refusal of the Ontario provincial government to answer independent MP Randy Hillier. on their function. So surely the government is aware of the intentions to build these isolation camps from coast to coast. And my question to the premier is, how many of these camps will be built and how many people does the government expect to detain? The answer he received did nothing to address the crux of the question. And the government House leader basically continued to talk about how this is a good policy that has been working. He was referring to people returning to isolate. But in the actual document itself, this is the cause for concern, everyone. The government of Canada is considering engaging a third-party service provider for federal quarantine isolation sites that will be used to house and care for people for public health. Here it is. And other related federal requirements associated with the COVID-19 pandemic response. So the government is seeking feedback. Basically, this is not an actual bid. If they win, there is no winning. They're not going to win an offer. They're not going to win a chance. So this is not a bid of solicitation. This RFI will not result in the award of any contract. More questions. Why put out a notice of tender? Breaking down the language. This was where it gets concerning. So federal quarantine isolation sites that will be used to house and care for people for public health and other related federal requirements associated with the COVID-19 pandemic response. Other related federal requirements associated with the response. So this is where I got concerned and I started posing questions in the article. What are the other related federal requirements? What if they start forcing PCR testing on everyone? By the way, I link in an article there that's linked to Operation Moonshot in the UK, where it was leaked to the British Medical Journal, and they talk about increasing testing. And basically everybody would be tested on a weekly to bi-weekly basis, depending on their job, contacts, and you would have to have that information on an app in your phone to let you participate in society. So I asked that question.
A lot of countries don't let you fly into their countries without getting a test beforehand of a flight, and you have to isolate even before your flights too.
Yeah. We're banned from the EU now as of recently because of our cases, which is ridiculous. Because obviously, what does that have to do with anything? If you're healthy, you're healthy. But what if I refused because the PCR test is inherently unreliable? The creator of the test even said it shouldn't be used to diagnose illness. And specifically, he talked about how he had tried to use it to diagnose HIV, I believe it was. And he said, even though that was a rare disease, it still would pick up all sorts of other things. And it wasn't meant to diagnose illness. And when asked, well, is it useful? And he said, well, yeah, it tells you all sorts of things about basically what's in the body, but it doesn't tell you whether not somebody's infectious, or if there's enough viral content, or even if there was a lot there, that still doesn't prove infectivity. So what if I come into a contact with a probable COVID exposure? Even with no symptoms, could I be subjected to a COVID test against my will? The generalities in this document should concern each and every Canadian. Well, if I was while I was at one of these facilities, what if I wanted to leave as I was displaying no symptoms? What would happen to me if I attempted to leave that facility? This was precisely the question that I posed to Onyx in Alberta, who was an early adopter in providing a facility meant to isolate COVID-19 patients. I asked what would happen if a person wanted to leave. Would they be prevented? I was told no, not by the staff at Onyx. I then asked if Alberta Public Health would bring them back or find them. I was given no answer and was then passed off to Alberta Public Health for an answer. I have yet to receive a response. So you can read that article a little bit more in depth about that. It's a good little introductory piece to what it's really about. I recommend it for people. It's concerning. So the isolation camps, like they're talking about, it's like if you came in from the country or something, or you're sick and you didn't have somewhere to isolate, it might make sense to provide a facility like that. But when you leave language open, like other related things to the COVID-19 pandemic, and we see some of the measures our government has been trying to make, it is always going to be concerning to leave that power in the hands of a government, especially one that has so many ethics violations, that has such a discontempt for the law, and continually does things to avoid accountability for their actions. I really don't trust that government to have that kind of power. So do you want to go into some lighter stuff and then we'll come back into the heavy Fema stuff?
Yes, I'm just tweeting out our live stream right now.
All right now.
Okay. Well, this isn't, I don't know how light, this is more light, but it's so in the general area where we live, it's 3 Walmarts were set on fire last night.
Yep.
The first one was at 9:15, I believe it was. Just to double. They're all within 1 hour. So I believe one was at 9:15. It was the first Sunrise Shopping
Yep.
Center, Walmart. The second one was approximately later into
9:50.
closer to 10, but 9:50ish. It was at Stanley Park, the Stanley Park Walmart. And then the third one was at the Bridgeport location in Waterloo, which was about 10:20 p.m. I think it was. Yeah, and they lit the fire. So they lit all the toilet paper aisles on fire.
Yeah.
And now all those employees at all those places, all the people who shop at all three of those stores, have to wait up to 2 weeks, I believe, if not a month. So I've heard from some people.
Is that to get it?
Like the store's closed for 2 weeks to a month.
Bro, that affects me. I didn't know.
Yeah,
come on. That's the place down the street from me. That's where I go for everything.
Hey, the Fairview one's only 10 minutes away from your house, but you can't get your fresh veggies there yet. But yeah, it's just baffling to me why someone would do this. And they're in this article from Global News, they're talking about how it could be the hey, it's Linda. Yeah.
It sounds like sorry, I wanted to bring it in. So 9:15, 9:50 and like 10:20. They're all like, so walking to the Stanley Park Sunrise Center.
I got curious about that, right? I was wondering, is it three groups all simultaneously going for it, or one? I think my hypothesis is that it's one group of people or one person maybe traveling to each store, because I did the Google Maps thing. You Google Maps it from point A to B to C, right? A, B to C, 24 minutes, full trip going, constantly not stopping driving. So it's possible that they traveled within that hour from store to store to store and lit them all on fire.
I see. I don't know. I thought maybe they did it that way, ABC, all within like a reachable time frame, so that they would think it's potentially one person, but it could be multiple. But we think it's a group of people. Just guessing. Yeah, it's hard to tell. Like the reason I think it would be a group of people is because you'd have to be pretty much perfect, wouldn't you? Like you're saying, it's like, yeah, you can make the time, but like how much time does that give them in each store? Is it like a sprint to the toilet paper section, light it on fire, and run?
Because I was hearing from employees at my work, that they were told to guard the toilet paper aisles after they heard about these fires at the other stores, and they will continue to guard these aisles for the foreseen future.
I'm sorry, I just picture like a warehouse employee from Walmart. Just like, what do you think that's gonna do? Like the manager's like, well, we got to do something. We'll send out Steve.
Well, they have a surplus of employees now from the other stores. So.
All true. They got some unemployed people looking. It's bad. All right, so
my condolences to those who can't work right now, though. Condolences is the wrong word, but you know what I mean.
All right, I want to pull up something. We'll go a little bit light, and then we'll go into our FEMA stuff. But if you haven't seen it, Project Veritas, be brave, do something. One of my favorite journalists actually is James O'Keefe. So recent one he did was expose Google, and let's just say some interesting things came up in this video. You're gonna have this guy's very high end. He knows everything from the top down, and he's gonna basically tell you exactly kind of how the algorithms work and kind of the corruption in around it.
You go to search and you type in like Donald Trump, and it's like all negative. And when you type in Joe Biden, it's all positive.
Because it's skewed by the owners or the drivers of the algorithm.
It's skewed by the owners and drivers of the other algorithm.
Like, so if I say, hey Google, here's not $2 billion, feed the data set of whenever Joe Biden his search, you would get these results.
It seems like they favor the Democrats. I'm like,
because we're in America. If Trump wins, there will be riots. Left wings, they will be ecstatic.
This guy, Ritesh Lakar, a technical program manager at Google, is telling our journalists the truth about the company he has worked at for years.
Yep.
With the presidential election just days away, he is calling out his own friends in big tech.
I disagree with the corporations playing God and taking away freedom of speech of both sides. Basically. So I'm like, you are playing selective God. Like, if it was fraud, it doesn't matter, but for Trump, Melania Trump, it matters. And on the other side, Trump says something, misinformation, you're going to delete that because it's illegal under whatever pretext. And if a Democratic leader says that, then you're going to leave it like that. You know?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, you're not following one way or the other. You were just plain and simple trying to play God. When Trump won the first time,
This part.
people were crying in the corridors.
People were crying in the
There were
corridors of
protests, there
Google.
were marches, there were like, I guess, group therapy sessions for employees.
Wow.
Yeah, organized by HR. I can't keep doing this.
Telling
They were teaching Chinese people how to do American jobs and come back and get surveilled on the way, and then
Who were you doing that for Google?
Google, Fitbit, yeah, these two companies primarily. Morally and ethically, I disagree. And I guess that's one of the reasons I feel suffocated. I feel suffocated at Google.
If you're an insider at a big tech company and you want to expose the truth and seek,
Yeah, so you can check out more of his work on Project Veritas. Facebook's a good spot for that. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg on that story. There's a lot more there.
I just added DuckDuckGo to my Chrome now.
Yeah, well, you're just getting into it. So I would recommend for all our viewers to grab the VPN. What is it? Is it just which one do I have? First
You can
off,
use
Proton
Other
VPN. The reason why I recommend Proton VPN is because Proton Mail comes free with it. Pick that up. You can get the free version. It doesn't give you as many options for servers, things like that. And I think you have to go out of the United States instead of Canada, which will make it a little bit slower. But if you want to pay for it, it makes it a little bit slower. If you want to pay for it, it's about $10-12 a month. I use DuckDuckGo as well. That's not an endorsement. That's just a statement of fact.
I feel like, sorry. I have used in the past. I think it's Express. I don't know, NordVPN. I think it is.
Yeah, I think they're another free like one.
Not free, but
Free-ish.
in
They're
the
cheap.
realms of Reddit, you can get subscriptions for like pennies to the dollar.
All right.
It's weird, but, you know.
Let's go into the FEMA pastors. You ready? Yeah, this is new for you though, isn't it?
I know nothing about this, so
This ought to be fun. All right. So I just want to show the document for everyone here. Community needs assessment of the New York City faith. I'm going to go down the recommendations.
Can I guess this is like criticizing religion?
No. This is literally a plan to implement religious groups and organizations into FEMA emergency planning response systems.
So
Yes.
elaborate. I think
Pandemic. We want their help. Tornado. Help. Martial law. We want help. Like, that's what it is. Let me read from it and you'll understand. Relationship building. They want to formalize and prioritize faith sector partnerships and regular face-to-face networking opportunities between faith communities and their leaders. They want to identify, contract, and fund faith sector multipliers to build resilience via training and operationalizing faith-based assets, capacities, and capabilities. Identify training needs, limit the use of one-off events. They want this was the part that really got to me, and I got to look more into this, and I'm just scratching the surface here tonight. But develop a partner to sponsor conferences, trainings, and exercises that center on how to use resources and tools that are aimed at developing skill sets and that strengthen disaster and public health testing capabilities. I know this bothers me when I look at my own videos, so I'll highlight it for everyone. Sorry. These events should be directed at all faith sector institutions of varying skill levels, be culturally and religious competent, give promise to minority needs, and always have time for networking feedback. But this part, listen to this. This ought to give everyone chills. Okay. I can't even believe this is something I've read. Trainings for deployable roles, chaplains, should include certifications, ID badges, and deployment gear that government will formally recognize. What? Trainings for deployable roles, chaplains, pastors, chaplains, should include certifications, ID badges, and deployment gear that government will formally recognize. would we recognize it? Or would only government officials trained to recognize and recognize? This is in the U.S. There are estimates of 28,000 to 100,000 pastors that have signed on to this program. And I'm just scratching the surface of it. But I mean, we read through this. They want trainings, exercises. They talk about really trying to build relationships, incentivize participation in events by offering no-cost participation, providing food and refreshments, encouraging networking, build or strengthen current communication systems, offer trainings which incorporate mechanisms or prepared programs which incentivize and monitor if congregations have co-op, preparedness, or communication plans, how practice these plans, all sorts of things. It gives the government an eye into these churches. And part of this program, too, is it has them all on surveys, so they're communicating across the country through these surveys as well. So this is just the recommendations. They talk about increased funding and resources as well. And then we're going to go into another document here. This is an offshoot of the same thing, but I want to show the crowd. Engaging faith-based and community organizations, planning considerations for emergency managers, homeland security. Page 9. Sorry, everyone. That's not helping me. Where is it? Page 9. Okay. Reach out to them. Okay, so this is talking about when things aren't in an emergency time. Reach out to them. Unengaged groups may not understand the language, resources, and infrastructure of emergency management. Consider scheduling time with the organizations to meet with the leaders personally and to explain these concepts as needed. Emergency managers can, this is where like another red flag. Emergency managers can also assign a staff member to attend one of the organization's regular meetings to begin building relationships with constituents. No indication whether or not the church would even be aware. Okay, start the conversation with organization's current priorities and contributions to the community. It's always going to sound good, and then you read, and then you find the thing that should just give you chills.
So you're saying a pastor could sign on to it without letting their congregation know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then they might even have a uniform that would be identifiable. They might have gear that would be identifiable to the government, but no one else, potentially.
Strange.
To say the least. Track the capabilities, interests, and trainings of the faith-based and community organizations. Record information from the organization's assessments for future planning purposes. So they're keeping all that, using it. I don't want to go down one more spot here. Sustainability, staffing. Using the 7-step engagement process, they want a jurisdiction use. Okay, not that one. Sorry, everyone. Maintain consensus. Seek consensus about the role of each member in the partnership. Maintain contact. This is like they're talking about keeping the relationship, which is interesting because it means it's more than just like a procedural thing. They're trying to make it kind of friendly relationship. Maintain contact, establish periodic meetings, and send regular emails and or newsletters to keep partners engaged, answer any questions they may have. Increase contact with government partners, invite government partners to engage with disaster networks during non-disaster periods. For instance, FEMA's voluntary agency liaisons use seasons with low disaster as an opportunity to deliver information to another guy. And they just keep on this stuff all the time, making sure it's constantly in the minds of those taking these things. And then they have, this is the form. Capabilities assessment form. You can see all the things they ask about. What can you provide? Can you provide childcare, clothes distribution, commercial kitchen, counseling, security, shelter management, transportation, other. It's a very in-depth, and this is all information that the government is going to hold on to and use for who knows. But as we dig into this more, we will cover the story and let you know what we find. But it's going to be one of those slow build stories because there's just so much to go through. As you can see, we were just scratching the surface.
It sounds good on the surface, right?
They all do.
But yeah, and that's the thing. But like you think about how that could be used to persecute Christians if you wanted to. Mm-hmm. Government knows who every Christian is, or where, if they give you a list, the pastor gives the government a list of all their congregation names that are registered to the congregation.
Well, think about it this way.
Yeah.
If your pastor was undercover and he was working with the government and he had established a good friendship with a bunch of the liaisons and people in the government from these organizations, and then the pandemic happens and you're not following guidelines, maybe that trusted leader is the one who reports you without you ever knowing. And again, we'll quote that Oliver DeMille. Again, this is why you need to read every document all the way through. We tend to let our freedom slip away because they are tucked away in documents and policies that most of us don't ever read or deal with directly. Guys, you can take my word for it, but I'm one person. As I say all the time, like I'm one person, I can only do so much. And my opinion is from my perspective and from my experience. So need multiple eyes on it. And I think that's what originally made America a really strong foundation, is because the people they were very educated about the manner the government should operate, because they had gotten away from tyranny, and they fought tooth and nail because they were educated. And slowly over time, we've watched that education go away, and people no longer, they want security so bad they're willing to give up their freedom. And if you are willing to give up your freedom to have a little bit of security, you are ensuring that you'll have neither. But I want to do a quick little plug for anybody on here that's looking for Christmas presents. As you can see, I'm sporting alpaca here tonight. 100% alpaca. I'm sweating a storm. I got the door. I actually have the patio door open behind me because it's too hot otherwise. This one here, double thick, zippy, goes nice, high quality. These are going to be 125. They're on sale from 150. If you're within an hour of me, I can probably hand deliver it to you for like $15 shipping. Otherwise, then we'll have to go from there. We'll go down to the actual shipping place and figure it out from there, how much it's going to cost, because alpaca weighs quite a bit. So this is for the females. This is alpaca and wool, 50-50 blend, cardigan, 2 pockets in the front, right here. Is this the only color we have?
No, we've got white,
we got gray,
purple,
and white, and large and medium. I think we have 2 large or 3 larges of that. These are going to be 60 down from 80. These are 50-50 again, blend of alpaca and wool. Let's pull some other things in here. Bam, you keep it going. It's like an info show now. It's not even news. All right, this is another one of those alpaca, double thick pockets in the front.
No, buy today.
Yeah, that's right. For the low price up. So the double thick alpaca sweaters, these are great for winter. 125, great Christmas gift. You would really be helping us out.
If you buy today, you get 2 for the price of 1.
Oh, hell no, son. Yeah, when you pay as much as I paid for all this merch, you ain't getting 2 for 1. This is my favorite color. The white, this is what? This is another large, double thick alpaca. Now, the reason I keep saying double thick, there's a distinction. These online go for 250, 200 plus would be the cheap end, but pretty much 250 and above. These are pullover hoodies, acrylic, and these will be $20. So we have that color, and we have white and gray, and $20. $20 for, we're almost done. Sorry. $20 for handmade Peruvian purses as well. Zip on top, side pocket here. They're handmade in Peru. If you want to ask if they were paid fair wage, they got the gringo pricing, so they got more than a fair wage for their work. And this is the other one we have. They have the they have the Inca designs on the side. I really like them. They're sharp. And if you're interested, throw us a message at divergemedia@outlook.com, or you can send us a message in Messenger. And I will never, ever try to sell another thing, on this live stream again, other than our actual merch. But I've been holding on to that for a while. It's great stuff. It really is high quality. And I promise you, you will not find a better price on specifically the alpaca. But the cardigans, 60, 50-50 blend, but 125 for these double thick alpaca sweaters. I mean, I know they go for at least 200, but usually 250 plus. So if you're looking for a good Christmas gift, I'm sweating my rear end off here. I'm going to open the patio door a little bit more, but they're great. And let's go on to the next thing then, okay? What do you got? What do you got?
We got Tim Hortons ending their double cupping.
Oh, it feels like it's barely a mention, but
Barely mentioned, but I don't want to bring this up because they've used sleeves before, but they also have they switched out the lids on the iced coffees, and people are still like, I'm still getting, whenever I buy an iced coffee, they still give you a straw with it.
because
So
people complain, I guess.
So yeah, I guess people complain, so they give it to everybody, and I go, I don't want a straw, and then I end up taking a straw. But during COVID time, you can't just give it back the straw now; you got to throw it in.
Just for the record, Broderick has a stack of like 30 straws in his car at all times.
Usually, but that was because I was getting 2 iced coffees a day.
Well, he's
Yeah.
slowing his pace now. He's slowed his pace.
That's kind of the case now. So it's all an environmental thing. They want to put sleeve. They want to do better sleeves, better, nicer sleeves for coffees that always come on the coffees, and something like that, in a sense.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah.
I mean, they're moving towards the environmental thing slowly, but it's kind of, you kind of laugh at human nature a little bit. It's like you make these lids so that you don't need to have straws, and then you get people complaining that they don't have the straw. I don't even know what to make of it anymore. I mean, it's just kind of one of those things, right?
It's hypocritical, but I bet you that the higher ups at Tim Hortons don't even know this is going on.
No, probably not.
Because it's like, oh, like I
Love iced coffee. I mean, yeah, a little bit too much on our end too, I think. I want to bring up a good quote from a book here. You're technically not even supposed to say that you read Robert Greene when you read Robert Greene, because that's one of his rules. It's true. This one, The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. I'm going to read from chapter 16.
I have the audiobook.
It's a good one, eh? It's a heavy one, but it's a really good one. Backs it up with a lot of great historical examples to help him really drive home the points to you. But here we go. The law of aggression. See the hostility behind the friendly facade. They churn. I'm going to read the whole thing. It's not that long. On the surface, the people around you appear so polite and civilized. But beneath the mask, they are all inevitably dealing with their frustrations. They have a need to influence people and gain power over circumstances. Feeling blocked in their endeavors, they often try to assert themselves in manipulative ways that catch you by surprise. And then there are those who need the need for power and impatience to obtain it are greater than others. They turn particularly aggressive, getting their way by intimidating people, being relentless and willing to do almost anything. You must transform yourself into a superior observer of people's unsatisfied, aggressive desires, paying extra attention to the chronic aggressors and passive aggressors in our midst. You must recognize the signs, the past patterns of behavior, the obsessive need to control everything in their environment that indicate the dangerous types. They depend on making you emotional, afraid, angry, and unable to think straight. Do not give them power. When it comes to your own aggressive energy, learn to tame and channel it for productive purposes. Standing up for yourself, attacking problems with relentless energy, and realizing great ambitions. Be a champion observer. Yes, Linda. Yes, Linda. So that leads into our next topic. It is easy in this day and age to get caught up in the emotions of everything going on. People ask me, Greg, are you not angry with what's going on? Come on. Of course I'm angry. Of course I'm angry. But if I allow that anger to overtake myself, then I no longer have the ability to think clearly and develop solutions towards those problems. When I allow myself to get swept up in the crowd, I no longer have the ability to independently think away from the crowd. So these are the things that we must do. Sorry, go ahead.
I think that's one reason why they say you should, at a lot of costs, separate journalism from activism. Mm-hmm. And there's a line where you shouldn't cross with that. I mean, Rebel shows that they do it all the time. But I don't know, like, there's sometimes where you shouldn't. I don't know, but they usually do a decent job. I would say.
I'm working on my anger too, Linda. No, it's you're exactly right. Like, I don't know what to say about it, but when you get swept up in the crowd, when you get swept up in the emotion of everything going on, you lose your ability to be independent and think away from the crowd. And right now, there's so much going on. There's so much anger to capitalize on. Me being the logical person I am, who's hell bent on finding the truth at all cost, I don't so much care about the popularity and things like that. I just follow the story. So I want to bring this up again. Well, end of the night. We don't really want to bring it up, but I want to talk about why I actually wrote this article. So,
Should we do it chronologically?
pretty much I'm going to read through it, yeah. So, it's titled, I Want to Be Lamont Daigle, Civil Liberties Group, The Line, Canada. Now, it's meant to get you to click and read through it. And so I support the general essence of the movement. If that means unifying behind those that fight for the charter, then yes. But I go on to say, basically, we were going into an interview with Mr. Daigle on the 5th of October. Somebody tipped us off and said he was potentially Antifa. I honestly didn't believe it at all. But it changed our direction of that interview a little bit so that we asked more questions and generalities. And then after that interview, we went back and started going through everything. So then we'll start from there of what we went back through chronologically. So July 11th, we interviewed him. Broderick asked him, where do you see Canada going in the next 6 months to a year on an optimistic scale and a negative scale? What are your hopes? But what is maybe the reality? So he thought on a positive, optimistic scale, every province could be fractured into their own nation. Wait, I got to read it again. Own province or something to that effect. But this is what stood out to us. Again, some of the parts of this organization are ready for violence if they need to. We don't want that, or we don't need that to happen. We don't want it to happen. The best case scenario is that we have a completely different way of running the government than the way we've been doing, because quite frankly, we're here today because the way the government has been set up is not for the people. It's just not. Hopefully we go positive. Before that, he's talking about how historically that homicides and violence in the streets, that's historically how anything has ever changed, made changes in societies. So again, that on its own is not overly concerning. I want to walk you through my thought process, okay? But it is concerning that he says there's some groups that are a part of this organization that are ready for violence if they need to. Well, what would define need to? Okay, so there's that. Moving on, the theme reoccurred. This was another thing we brought up. Their public backing of Mr. Galati's lawsuit, but Mr. Daigle himself in our October 5th live stream indicated he didn't really have a belief in the judicial system. Well, number one, I don't believe any of them. I'm sorry, but I've given up on trusting any of the law courts. I've given up on trusting police. I know there's good police out there and they're there to protect us, and anything outside of that, I don't trust them, okay? Because they're always lying to me, okay? They're always trying to get their mandate, and the thing is this, even when a judge overrules something in one province and lets another province do the same, it's there, you know what? Until this thing's wide sweeping, I don't believe anything that's going on. He then finished by saying, I'm also not educated enough to be able to speak intelligently about it. He continued, you don't get to be a judge by following the rules of the people. You get to be a judge by glad-handing and doing all the things you had to do to get there, which is selling out. Sorry, but lawyers and judges create language that we can't understand, so that we have to basically pay for them for understanding. So again, I can understand some of the arguments that were actually made in this statement. I can understand the concerns, but when you're publicly standing behind somebody who's taking constitutional challenges to court, it's maybe not something you should be saying on the public record. But again, that's not the reason why we wrote the article. So it struck me an odd. Keep in mind, no affiliation between Mr. Gotti and his plaintiffs. There's a part of me, and this is a violence on the mind quote. We have the videos underneath. Maybe, I'll play it after this one. So this is where I brought it up in the earlier part of the live stream. I'll read this and then I'll give you a counter parallel, and you tell me if you think it's okay. Because I've been attacked for saying I shouldn't have done this. He's basically saying he transmutes that so it doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm going to give this to you. There's a part of me that wants to kill people, okay? And the question was this was about suicide. So let me get that first too, right? The question for context. Yeah, the question for context before we read this was about suicide. Experts only predict that numbers will rise due to COVID-related issues. Why do you think this isn't a huge talking point for the mainstream media? Are a few lives saved from COVID worth the extra suicides this year and every year following? So this was his answer to that question. There is a part of me that wants to kill people, okay? There is a part of me that hates bullies so fucking bad. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. That I want to go up to them and I want to punch them right in their throat ball, okay? There's people out there yelling at me when I'm on a march, taking these people in the street and stuff, and they're saying some pretty crappy things. And don't you think I want to go up to them and give them a sidekick right to the face? Yes, I do. I want to be violent. I want to be angry, but I transmute that through the fact I'm a disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda and Dr. David R. Hawkins, and I believe in Christ consciousness. Now, the David R. Hawkins, we're going to remember that name because that's on the recommended reading list of the Mankind Project, which ties into Lamont's beliefs because he has said that has made a huge difference in his life. He's an active member on meetup.com for the Toronto group. He's been in there for over a decade. So he believes this, and he's saying he's a disciple of a man named Dr. David R. Hawkins. Dr. David R. Hawkins wrote a book called Power vs. Force, and in that book, we'll pull it up here, he has a map of consciousness. Dr. David R. Hawkins' view of God, when you've reached the enlightenment level of consciousness, is when you view yourself as God. So that's when you're enlightened. So I just thought that was odd, but that's, again, not why I wrote the article. Okay. So the question, let's listen to that actual answer because everybody's saying we taking it out of context. I want to prove we did quote, we did video of quote.
There's a part of me that wants to kill people. Okay? There's a part of me that hates bullies so fucking bad that I want to go up to them and I want to punch them right in their throat ball. Okay? There's people out there yelling at me when I'm on a march, taking these people in the street and stuff that are saying some pretty shitty things. And don't you think I want to go up to them and give them a sidekick right to the face? Yes, I do. I want to be violent. I want to be angry. But I transmute that through the fact that I'm a disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda and Dr. David R. Hawkins, and I believe in Christ consciousness.
See, all he really had to say was something in the terms of, I was bullied growing up, or I was bullied, and something's in relation to suicide. But then that.
Yeah. So that was the quote. That was the video. And again, that wasn't the reason why we wrote it per se, but these are the things that struck us as odd. And then we went back and looked through the rest of it. But when we got into the Mankind Project, let's skip down here. I think for myself, I instantly lost a friend because I've been involved in the spiritual community. I was involved with a men's group with the Mankind Project. So we looked into the Mankind Project very, very deeply, by the way. Mankind Project touts itself as a global brotherhood of nonprofit charitable organizations and an organization that empowers men to missions of service. Okay, sounds nice. But there's a lot of controversy surrounding it. This was a Houston Press article called Naked Man, the Mankind Project, and Michael Cinto. They addressed it in the actual website, but they didn't take them to court, is my understanding, and their actual addressal of it doesn't exactly put it to rest at all. So here's some of the things that were written about in this letter. My understanding is this man came back from one of their new warrior training weekends and then proceeded to commit suicide, but he wrote about the rituals and things he went through before he did that. In a letter to the sheriff's office, he detailed some of the rituals and activities he witnessed. Blindfolded walking tours and nude. People blowing sage smoke in the face while 50 or so naked men dance around candles. Men sitting naked in a circle discussing their sexual histories while passing a wooden dildo called the cock. Naked men beating cooked chickens with a hammer. And then at the end of the day, third and final day, they were going to go home. They threatened us with imprisonment, wrote Cinto. They said that if we were married to tell the wives we loved them. They told us not to discuss any of the process that we went through. Then they let us leave. Okay, so when we started getting into this is where it started getting concerning. The ties in here. And then there was the Black Lives Matter endorsement. That is what caused us to write the article. Leading thousands in the street. And let's go back to, I wanted to bring the parallel. We'll come back down to Black Lives Matter, but you distracted me and I kind of forgot where I was going with it. But no, it's all good. Sorry, we got so much here. But this quote here, violence of the mind, people were attacking me saying, court's like, don't you get angry? And it's like, he didn't really mean it because he said he transmutes. It's like, okay, the parallel I give people is this man is leading thousands of people in the street and there's like potential public safety risk. Now, if I'm a teacher, or if I was interviewing to be a teacher and I said, hypothetically, I said, I want to be violent, I want to hit kids, I want to do this, I want to do that, but I transmute that fact, would you ever hire me? I think the answer is very clearly no. So why are we restricting? Why are we lowering the bar for people that are fighting for our freedoms and rights, that are at the premier? They're pretty much the premier civil liberties movement right now across Canada. So why are we lowering the bar for them when it's arguably never been a higher cost if we lose? That's why I wrote the article. When we get into the Black Lives Matter connection, I could not, in good conscience, let it go. I could not. And my character and integrity is worth more to me. Remember the conversation we had, Project? I said I expect to lose 500 subs.
Mm-hmm.
And here they are. They're saying, you know, hey, you're a piece of garbage. You did this for views. It's like I literally said when we released it, I think we'll lose 500
integrity. That's what they wrote.
I whatever. I know who I have to answer to.
Mm-hmm.
I know who I am inside, and I know my history. You can say whatever you want. I hurt your feelings because I hurt somebody you like, but please remove yourself from the cult of personality and look at this objectively. How can this have lasting power? How can you red pill millions and millions and millions of more Canadians when this stuff's out in the open? And I mean out in the open, because he's been saying it across multiple interviews. All it took was somebody actually listening and going through it. And unfortunately, when I got to the BLM connection, they full out endorsed them. So Dr. David R. Hawkins, his book is on the reading list for the Mankind Project, and they've been asked about being a cult or pagan group so many times it's a part of their frequently asked questions. In addition, they support BLM and provide a full statement that verifies such. Greg, you don't link your stuff well. It's all here, people. Like, you can attack me all you want, but if you haven't been through the article, stop. You're watching a 2-minute video meant to get you to click on the article. Here we go. When people think about racism, they think that, look at what's happening in the States. I just want to go here. Just a few examples of people speaking their truth. They talk about George Floyd. The Mankind Project Canada condemns the racist policies, systems, and individual actions that kill, wound, and neglect our fellow human beings. We recognize that individual and systemic racism is a significant issue in Canada, and we're committed to making positive changes to better support differences within our circles and beyond. Black Lives Matter, Indigenous Lives Matter, and statements are not enough. For those of us who are members of dominant cultures, it is much more difficult, though equally more important, to look at the status quo and how it benefits us differently than others, merely because of the color of our skin, to recognize how we support the status quo and to take action. As a national level, we have strived to create a national strategy and support our individual communities in building competence and intercultural connection. We recognize that the current board of directors and our membership does not reflect our country's makeup. We are largely white, middle-aged or older, straight cisgendered men. And if we want to be better at creating competency and connection, that needs to change. So this is my issue with this. No, it doesn't need to change. You can treat people good, and you don't need to go it doesn't matter the color. Just treat people good, and we shouldn't be like, if you're obsessing about numbers, you're bordering racism now. Oh, I need more black friends because it just got to balance it out more. And it's like, that's kind of the vibe again. That might not be what they mean, and maybe I'm taking that out of context. But at the end of the day, treat people fairly. Judge them based on their character and integrity. Love everyone until they done something against you. And even then, you still love them anyways, but you just protect yourself and remove yourself from being hurt. So we went through that. It's signed on by all their board of directors back here. So this is, by the way, the connections go further than just this. And I will say that I know about a lot more connections than this. So that's included there. He also he has a background. To me, the background, it seems he's underplayed his intelligence a bit, because he definitely has a background in business. Worked on with the Wealthy Backpacker, that book. He has a history where he seems to be, and that's actually one of the quotes from that book, Dr. David R. Hawkins, is that smart people basically pretend to not be smart, and that's the true essence of the power of the game. Funny how we're all racist now since Trudy rode in town. BLM is not what it appears to be. Follow the money. Yeah, you know what? We're on the follow the money thing. I keep doing this for people, but maybe there's someone new. Antifa.com. Oh.
Well, it seems as though as we started talking about this heavy subject, our viewer count was going up a few people.
Well, I mean, I personally think a lot of it's probably people from that that are in spying. That's what I personally believe because I know it's been happening, but I'm not concerned. Again, truth falls where it falls. Character and integrity matter to me above all else. And you can think I don't have it, but ultimately, I did this expecting to lose half my viewership. I did it expecting to never be able to cover these events again. And I will do it because it's the right freaking thing to do, regardless of the cost. People don't understand, man. I signed up to die for my country. Okay? It didn't end up going there and things ended up changing. My character and integrity is all that matters to me. I was willing to give in my mind. It doesn't mean I was anywhere close. I was in 2 months. COVID happened. I decided I was going to become a journalist. That's what happened. And I was a reservist. And ultimately, I wanted to be full-time Rake Force, but my wife broke down. It's funny how God works, because if I would have been in the Rake Force, I wouldn't be here today sitting in front of you. So my wife broke down when I was literally on the brink. I had a meeting that week with the guy for intake. It was a big, can I go? And then my wife broke down sobbing. She's like, I can't. I've been trying to put on a tough face. I can't do that. So it's okay. We'll figure it out and go from there. I'll do the reserve thing. I'll get the experience that way. And I was in 2.5 months, something like that. COVID hits. And I started thinking on it. That's when we had the conversation about, are you taking this seriously? Are you going to stick with it? And then he said, yes. I talked to my bombardier. And that was when the decision was made. I said, it's with a heavy heart that I think it's time to leave. Because I feel like I can make a greater impact for my country and my nation outside of the military currently. And that's not a slight on anything you do. It's just I feel I have a unique opportunity here. And they said, absolutely. We support you. The door is open if you want to come back in. This is how awesome the military is for the camaraderie. And they said, hey, by the way, the mess hall's still open for you. If it's open for us, it's still open for you. So pop in sometime. And that's the camaraderie of the military. I can't say enough good things about those people. And what I ultimately wanted to do, aren't you glad you didn't stick with it? Oh, thanks, Linda. But I am. I in a sense, I'm going to be honest about this. Am I glad I didn't stick with it? I feel like what God was doing was getting me prepared to make that ultimate sacrifice in my heart. So when I said I was going to go full-time reg, I was prepared mentally. I wasn't in a good place at the time. This was like 2 years ago. And I was I was just ready. I was like, I'm going to be a warrior about this and I'm going to go to the end. And my wife broke down and here I am. I'm the one choking up, but she broke down.
Don't make me.
And I go into reg force, or I go from reg and I said, okay, we'll go in the reserves. And I had to apologize up and down to all the intake. And okay, well, I wanted to go artillery. This was my plan. Artillery for 3 years, get my combat experience, go into intelligence, and then I wanted to go rescue children. Doing, if you've ever heard of Operation Underground Railroad, I wanted to do the undercover sting operations. A little bit of background about me. I have over 5 years of martial arts experience, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai. I can throw. I can fight. I feel like I'm a fighter in my heart. And as you think you are, so you are. So I was ready. But things just changed. And I felt like this was my chance to truly do something and make an impact. And again, it has always been about doing the right thing for me and always been about making the biggest impact possible. So today, we're looking at where our nation is. $27 billion to $1.47 trillion. We're going to need some creative thinking from a lot of different patriots here. Anger, rage, all these things that people are feeling. It feels good, doesn't it, in the short term to be angry? You can't think for shit. You're not going to develop any solutions in that stupor and that attitude and that mindset. Put it aside. People, well, Greg, aren't you angry? Of course I am. Of course I am. But I focus that anger realistically. I'm not even really angry about it anymore. I focus my energy in to the things that I believe will make an impact against these things. And that's the flu articles, that's the PCR test, that's the masking, that's the Great Barrington Declaration, that's the, my goodness, how much stuff have we covered? The foreign regulatory vaccines, that's the isolation camps. I mean, all these things we've been trying to bring to Canadians. Project story on the quarantine terror in Flinton, Ontario. a story about the 15-year-old or 13-year-old girl in Quebec, Rimouski. Was it Rimouski? I think it was Rimouski, Quebec. That was
right.
no, that was something else. A 13-year-old girl in Quebec was coerced into wearing a mask, or she wouldn't be able to attend school. These are all things we've covered. Rimouski, Quebec, when we talked about the unmarked police from the United Nations there having, we believed United Nations, our Strong Cities Network, because it was the same thing we see in Victoria, Australia, just the unmarked SWAT-looking members with just colored numbers on their back. So we've been battling from day one to bring you the stories that matter. Now, mind you, I wasn't a great writer at the beginning of this, truthfully, and I still probably am not in the majority of eyes of the public. But I feel like I'm a decent researcher, and I feel like I have courage to say things that others won't. And so I just keep going at it one day at a time. I determined that I was going to try to write one article every day, Monday to Friday. I've been pretty consistent. I think I've only missed 2 or 3 articles. As a wise person told me this morning, you have to learn to let go of some control. You can only control your reaction. Absolutely. I like Jocko Willink. I talked to you about this. The extreme ownership rule, 99% rule. Even if you can only affect 1%, it's your fault. You want to know why you take that approach? Is if I can only affect the 1%, that's all I have to affect. Why? I can't change the other 99. But maybe if I do my 1%, absolutely amazing, the best I can, I can encourage the other 99% to do their part too. You can't take the blame for not getting things done and put it on other people. You can't take that. No, extreme ownership. Something went wrong, it's my fault. Because if I say that it's not, I've lost the control of the situation. I'm not looking for excuses. I'm looking for solutions. That's extreme ownership. People can attack us here. I promise you, Diverge Media is not going away. This company will be here long, long, long after today. And we are just starting. We're just here. We're just learning how to write. We're just building our platform. We are just learning how to set up our business. And we're just getting our quality up and up. But it's still getting there. Over time, I want to get more people on this platform, more viewers. It was an honor to have Tim Moen of the Libertarian Party on. We've had Greg Wycliffe of the PPC. We've had Mark Friesen, the Grizzly Patriot. These are all fantastic people that we've been able to sit down with. So was that?
He had you, but yeah.
It felt, well, yes, technically. Well, I got to put out that offer to him, but I feel like it will come back around one day. Well, and then on the topic of going forward here, again, you have to put aside your emotion if we're going to make the right decisions for this nation. We cannot be caught up in cults of personality. We got to red pill a lot of Canadians quick. And I don't care if the cult of personality is going to come after me because I say things that are uncomfortable to some people. I'm caring about the long-term consequences of this and the lasting power and being able to actually get the point across to Canadians in a quick and efficient manner. And if you have those things in mind, as a connection to the military said to me today, I shared that story with him. And he said to me, that's the type of truth that hurts the most, when it hurts you to actually tell it. And that's how this story felt. It hurt to actually tell it because I don't want to hurt the movement, because I look my kids in the eyes and I've been crying like every freaking day this week. I see what's on the wall. I'm an indebted servant for the rest of my life. If shit doesn't change real quick, it's not going to be good. It's only going to get worse. Like I mentioned in that book, Oliver DeMille, 1913. We've given away so many of our freedoms. Back in the day, people were educated and paid attention to everything. Now, we won't even look through these documents, and we expect our politicians to be honest about it. And I've talked about with our audience like this before. You read through a document, and you read through 30 pages. Like, how many people are even reading past the first 2 paragraphs? I'll tell you where the crap that you need to know is. It's in page 21, paragraph 2, sentence 3, whatever. And that's how they do this. It's 1 or 2 things in these big, lengthy documents, and that should cause you to crap yourself because it's another grab for your freedom. But
People
because
are too distracted, right?
Well, that's a big part of it, and I've thought about this too. It's almost like it's a plan, right? So people are so busy on the rat wheel trying to keep up, trying to pay the bills, that they get home, they got that 4 to 5 hours to themselves. Man, I don't want to look at documents. I don't want to do research. I just want to relax, put on the stupid tube. Right? And I don't even blame you. Like I've been there. Like I used to work 9 to 5 in an electrical warehouse, lifting stuff that was like 60 to 100 pounds all the time. Like I've been there. I know what it's like. But at the end of the day, you can't pass off your responsibilities for your freedom to someone else. It belongs to you. And if everyone had that attitude and everyone was combing through these documents, I am nothing. Like I literally, like I for context, I almost failed grade 11 academic English. Now, mind you, I was like top of the class in the applied class, but the difference was my grammar sucked, but I could think creatively. I'm not great. I'm just one person, and I'm finding this stuff. There's people out there that are much smarter than me, and we need people like you to get into the documents and look through it yourself. This is the only way the country will get better, is a committed group of people committed to analyzing analytically and going through every little piece of government document that comes out and grilling them every time they try to do something they shouldn't, whether it be take away of freedom, overstep, more overreach. I mean, we're already talking about this digital. Have you heard about this? The digital wall or the digital ID certification they want to break.
Yeah, Ontario.
Are we going to stop this or what? I mean, no one sees the concern of having all your stuff digitized, and eventually they're saying,
hackers, like,
well, yeah, there's that, but it's, again, if everything's digitized, you have to worry about hackers. You have to worry about that. But what if I say I don't? What if I didn't want a cell phone? Think about that.
Let's hope it's as much of a failure as it is the license plate changeover. Because that's pretty bad.
The good old Q-tip box coloring, eh? That's what it reminds me of. The new license plate to me is like a Q-tip box. Like if you took that color pattern and stretched it over a license plate, that's what Doug Ford brought to Ontario.
Well, did they not just flip around on that whole thing and go back to the old plate design? I thought that was what happened.
I don't know what they did. Okay, anyways, they
off track, but you know.
Yeah, the issue was like what, the nighttime stuff. You couldn't even see them at night.
They weren't reflective enough of the numbers because the light on the white was making it hard to read.
Well, sounds like a great system if you wanted to get away from tickets.
You know how many people who have sports cars and like modified vehicles in the region that I see here? I'm not saying they all street race, but I'm saying
yeah, I
see a lot of them with the new license plates, probably for a reason. But
probably for a reason. Okay, I want to go through one more article. Not yet. We covered the flu in Canada, the missing flu numbers in Canada. I've been working. I got to figure out how I'm going to do the Australia story. I've covered 3 different years, and I can't make this up. In 2018, there's one template. In 2019, the template changes again. In 2020, it changes again. So they have 3 different templates. None of the weeks line up, so you can't make a direct comparison. And I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to present that data. But yes, there's another drop-off in Australia, surprise, in 2020 on influenza. Now, I recently did an article for the flu in America, and you'll never guess what happened there. Here we go.
I want to do Sweden.
Oh, I got to make my way around the world, but when you realize they all hide their data in different ways to like bury it, make it impossible to find, it just frustrates the heck out of you. All right, week 11 in 2020, they performed 74,416 tests. There was 15.3% positive. In 2019, there was 26% positive on half the amount of tests, less than half actually. Okay. All right. So there's a 10.7% positive difference, less positives in 2019 compared to 2020. And they performed 39,636 less tests in 2019 and still had 10.7% more positive tests. Moving on to week 12. 73,090 tests performed in 2020, 7.5%. Now, week 13, we're coming into the peak of COVID. So notice the steep drop off from 15.3 to 7.5 week over week. And the prior year was less than half again for testing and 22.1% positive. So 14.6% more positives, and there was 42,000 more tests performed in 2020, but still somehow had 14.6% less positives. Okay, week 13, 2.33%. Over halved again. Previous year, again, 10 or less than 13,000 less tests, 14,000 less tests, 18.1%. Week 14, 0.8 versus 15.1. We'll just go through these now. 0.43% positive versus 11.8 in 2019. Here's the chart. This is the American chart. This is 2018-2019 season. As you can see, yes, it drops off. This is week 13 for the record, everyone. Look at how high that candlestick is right there. That's week 13, and the peak begins for COVID. And let's go into 2020. All right. As you can see, I can't comb over it. It's going to make me lose it. But week 13 basically falls off the face of the planet and almost non-existent again. This is the trend across Canada and the U.S. and a little less obvious in Australia because of the way they have hidden their data, or the way they've I want to say manipulated, but that's the they would get angry at that. The way they've hidden their data throughout their different websites makes it extremely difficult to get to the bottom numbers that you actually need. So that's a great little article. If you want to share it to your American friends, I recommend.
Do you want to compile the European Union? Do all little countries there.
So this is the issue. Remember in my UK video, I said the UK.
UK isn't in the EU.
It's in the EU. Right? So the way the European Union works is they have an influenza net. I think it's called influenza net monitoring system that monitors 11 different nations in the European Union. But I shared my UK video, you can't even get to the restricted data. They basically give you fluffy numbers that don't mean much of anything. And then the real numbers, number of positives, percentages, things like that are hidden. You actually have to fill out an application form to ask for permission. And by the way, that link's broken. So you can check out our video on YouTube on that. But I want to do the compilation. I don't know if I'll be able to do it in Europe. So I'm thinking Australia, maybe Sweden or Switzerland. And then that should be a good number to kind of round it out on. That would give me 5 different places across the planet. And then I'm debating on whether I'll make that into a quick little book for people to be able to give out to people with all the graphs and charts and different things in it, so that it's just centralized in one place for everyone. But we'll see. All I can tell you is the amount of frustration I've had looking at flu numbers. I spent like 10 hours so far going through Australian flu data, and I still don't know how I'm going to handle it. Actually, where's all my papers? I can show you all my data. This is all handwritten. This is just Australian flu data for my article. Wait, no, that's different. I lied. 5 sheets. But basically, what I noticed in 2020, week 13, 0.5% positive. But then they did this weird thing in Australia where they had actually tested positive or actually tested for influenza, and then they just diagnosed a bunch of people for influenza. Handwritten. Yeah, that's right. Only because it was easier to do this than to try to go back and forth between all the weekly reports and get the data. So there, 2019 as an example, we'll go week 15 to 15 and then up. Okay, week 15, percentage reporting cough and fever, 1.6%. In week 15, 2020, it was only 0.2%. 16, I'll just go. This is just the percentage of participants in the survey reporting cough and fever, but I thought it was odd that it also disappeared again at the same time. So it's not the direct comparison I wanted, which is what I'm talking about. I want the confirmed influenza cases, which they've hidden in a different document. And it just gets me angry.
Yeah, I cannot find I was trying to run Netherlands data.
It's a mess, isn't it? Once you start trying
it takes me to the WHO, euro.who. Stuff like that.
I feel the same way when I have multiple tabs and multiple Word documents on open. I don't want to see, like, if you go to my screen right now, you can just see, like, this is light for me tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's like 11. It's not even that much. No, I sometimes have it so small that it starts folding them in together and you can hardly see them. And that's usually when you pull out the pen and paper. Just too much. But I think we're about ready to wrap it up tonight. I want to go over one more thing for our viewers, and then I think we should sign off unless you got something else you want to bring to the forefront.
That's something related to Australia to kind of end on.
Okay. You want to bring that up now?
I have to get the screen share.
Okay, I'll go me then. We talked about our rights and freedoms being violated during the COVID era. We want you to know what your rights are. So you can't fight for your rights if you don't know your rights. Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees it has the reasonable limit on it. Everybody likes to quote this. I often talk about this. It's something called the Oakes proportionality test that needs to be met. This is what the Oakes proportionality test says. In order to take away your rights, these criteria must be met. There must be an important social objective that is pressing and of substantial concern, and the law must be shown to be of sufficient importance for overriding the charter. Right. Now, very low in a death percentage in the under 65 category, astronomically low. If you're in that category, you could basically get on your life. So to limit gatherings on those people, does it meet that pressing a substantial concern? No. Majority of, you're going to pass it on to the old people. That's why you got to stay. Nope, not again. When 80% of our deaths are in retirement homes, long-term care facilities, you can't say it's the general public's fault. It's more likely because that's a closed building anyways. It's probably something to do with the living conditions that you've had over 20, 30 years of reports on how piss poor they are that need to be addressed. Or two, it's people working in the facilities, going into multiple facilities and spreading illness that way, going into work when they're sick because they're short-staffed, on and on the list goes. Oakes proportionality test. Point 2, if it needs to be proportionate. If the objective is found to be sufficiently important, so if it gets past step 1, the government must then show that the means used are a reasonable and fair way to achieve its legislative objective. To make this determination, a court must consider 3 components of criteria, all which must be satisfied. There must be a rational connection made between the charter right violated and the government's objective. 2, minimal impairment. If a rational connection exists, the court will then examine the degree to which the measures impair the right or freedom. The right should be impaired as little as possible, and if it is impossible to impair a right to a lesser degree and still achieve the objective, the government must do so in drafting its legislation. So I think very clearly they violated that principle. We have a lot of young, healthy people that are being restricted, having their lives withheld from them. Okay, moving on. Third part of the Oakes proportionality test for step 2 of proportionality is proportionate effect, or that's the third step, proportionate effects. Minimal impairment. If a rational connection, if a rational connection exists, the court will then examine the degree to which the measure impairs the right or freedom. The right should be impaired as little as possible. And then many arguments put forward by governments in defending legislation fail at this part of the test. Don't ever underline in purple. It's a mess trying to read that. Proportionate effect. The effects of the measures must limit the right or freedom must be proportionate to the objective identified in the first part of the test. In other words, this third part of the test weighs the benefit to society as a result of laws being in place. What's the benefit to society? Wait a minute. Mandatory masking. Let's talk about that. Mandatory masking, CDC, small sample. But 1 week, you had over 70% of people that wore masks all the times were a part of the affected numbers. And overall, if you wore a mask all the time or often, they were responsible for over 80%, or not over, they're roughly 80% of all the cases. So to say and people with not wearing masks, asymptomatic infection is driving the spread is nonsense. And you definitely don't meet the effects of proportionate to the first part of the test, which shows the law must be shown to be of sufficient importance. So you have rights, but we don't until we all start speaking up on them. That's kind of how this goes. So if you don't know you have rights and it's like, and you're not exercising them, it doesn't mean anything, but you have them. Now, I'm going to tell you, when you go out and you start trying to take a stand on these things, it's going to be uncomfortable because nobody knows their rights. My wife was walked out of her job, lost her job because she refused to wear a mask. Now, her company policy, air quote, because she didn't actually sign a company policy, which is a written document that you then have to read through as an employee, agree to, and then sign. And it still has to give room for exemptions under the charter. She never signed anything like that. Instead, she did sign something that said she'd only work in her cubicle alone. And then they walked her out when she had a doctor's note for 2 weeks. And then the doctor turned around and said, I'm not going to do anything. I know it's a legitimate problem, but quite frankly, COVID's so scary. I think, mask more important. And I've made it my clinic policy that we won't give notes on that reason. And so we're back in, and so she goes, okay, well, I want the training module. They hand her the training module. It's just a 30-page thing she'd never seen before. She reads through it, and one of the things it says is mask and PPE, other PPE equipment are only required to be worn when physical distancing can't be ensured. So she said, hey, I'll social distance. I'm already socially distanced in my job. The only person I'm in contact with is in my social circle anyways. I'll shield my face upon entering the building. And ultimately, her doctor, by refusing to give her an exemption based on her actual medical history, was all proven. And he admitted it was a known problem. He goes, I ultimately just won't write. He's like, I've decided with other clinics in the area that we're not writing exemptions for anxiety, any acne-related issues, or any like bad breath-related issues. And he acknowledged that those were all common things. That's where we're at in society. So there's going to be a cost, but let's start doing this together, because once you start doing it together, then you can have some real sway power. I'll give an example. In her factory, all it would have took is 2 or 3 people coming along her side and saying, no. I looked at the training module. I see that she's not in violation of it. You're going to have to walk me out too. Done. It would have been done. Just filing a civil rights claim. You're in the perfect position to do it. Do a crowdfund if you need to. We are trying, Jaswa. I legitimately am trying. Not so much. I didn't even think to do a crowdfund yet. But ultimately, we reached out to a lawyer who blatantly lied to us. I won't say how I came to obtain this lawyer's name, but this lawyer, we call him up, and she tells him the story. We have everything in writing. All the emails were in writing back and forth. All the conversations recorded, very clearly laid out what the issue was. And this piece of garbage had the audacity to go, well, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms only applies to government employees. Well, it's unlikely that we really win your case, but you can send me a $3,000 retainer. I just want my I just want my temp job back. I just want to be able to work. $3,000 retainer, and you lied and said the charter only applies to government employees? My goodness. So if we know some good lawyers, I'm looking. In fact, Randy Hillary specifically said today for anyone to contact him if they need help. I'll consider that. I hadn't heard him say that, but I'll look into that. Ultimately, I don't know who's taking up that battle, who's going to be on the forefront of these legal actions, but we cannot put all our eggs in one basket because, quite frankly, there's a massive amount of eggs. So that's the best way to put it. You can't put all your eggs in one basket because there's a massive amount of eggs out there. Lawyers will stand up to these measures as quickly as the doctors. Oh, maybe a little bit slower. He said it in the speech at Queen's Park today. Yeah, I was listening, but I'm going to have to go back and listen for it.
So I was looking into this data, and it says the Netherlands. So I found it in a Reddit post, which links it back to the the RIVM, which is the Dutch CDC. So it says that the flu has only killed 404 people in the Netherlands this year. Average mortality in the past 5 years is 6,443 people.
Okay, now look up their COVID deaths. Okay, so what's the difference? What was those numbers? Oh, hold up. This is what I do all day. Okay, what are those numbers? You said 6,000 regular versus the current year.
6,443.
43.
Versus the current year at 404.
So that's 6,039 deaths missing in 1 year from the flu. Where'd they go? So they had to be classified as something else because the overall mortality rate didn't go down, right? So what's the COVID? You find those COVID numbers in the Netherlands, and we'll figure out.
The COVID death rate, or sorry, not death rate. The COVID deaths is at 6,873.
What? So wait a minute. So 6,000. 6,733. You said
6,873.
6,000. 873 minus 6039, right? That's only 834 deaths difference. When you factor out that all those missing flu numbers.
It's it's 400. It's roughly just over 400 deaths of a difference.
Just you gotta stop cracking me up, man.
420 or 430.
Thank God it was a light flu season, or the deaths would have overrun the hospitals. Yeah. Well, literally. Well, this is the thing. Okay, so you're saying there's literally 6,000 missing flu deaths, and I'm like, okay. Well, remember at the beginning of the pandemic, they're classifying flu or COVID-like symptoms as COVID. Well, if you look at the comparison chart of symptoms for flu and COVID, it's literally an overlap. Like it looks the same. So then you're like, okay, 6,000 deaths missing, and it's like 800 death difference, and that literally could have been the difference of long-term care facilities and the procedures the government did could have killed more people.
And keep in mind too, the Netherlands have never had, except for in a few regions, for a few weeks, they've never had a mask mandate.
Yeah, they reversed it pretty quickly. But again, for everybody checking out the live stream tonight, we're pretty much going to close up now. Check out the merch. And we got the prices on there. $125 for the double thick alpaca sweaters. We can do shipping within an hour of the KW area for $15, just my gas money. And on top of that, if you want to ship out of province or something like that, we can look into it, but I don't know what the cost will be. Alpaca is very heavy, so just keep that in mind if you're thinking about shipping it a long ways. It will get expensive.
I have a 51-second video from Melbourne, Australia.
All right, it better be a good one. We're gonna close out on it, man.
You might like it.
All right, let's go.
Might get a little.
Putting the flag on the ground. It's on the ground.
That's the extent of the video. He gets arrested, tackled to the ground.
Yeah. And it's becoming commonplace there now. And that's what will come here if you don't, stand up in the right ways, make your voice known.
Because, again, you look at how big the groups were in Quebec. What's limiting Ontario?
Well, we talked with Gordon Berlin from Montreal, who's under that strict level 4 lockdown. Nobody can even come to his house.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing this to Canadians right now. It doesn't matter if they live somewhere where they speak a different language. They're still Canadian. They're part of this nation, brothers and sisters in arms, our brothers and sisters of our nation. It doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter. The reason is that if somebody's freedom is attacked anywhere in this country, it's attacked everywhere in this country. If somebody's rights are stripped anywhere in this country, they're stripped everywhere in this country. They all work together. And the moment we start realizing that as Canadians and speaking with our voices together about the issues that really matter, and getting back true freedom and having, we don't have any shape of freedom now. It's just, we don't. And the parliamentary system is broken. We'll look at what happened today with Trudeau in Parliament. They don't want to have a committee to be held accountable, so they go. That's the crap. The vote today. What was the vote on? Specifically, it was a measure, and if it didn't, it was on the committee. They voted down the committee, and the NDP sided with the Liberals, so that there won't be an election. And I don't think there will be a committee either, or it's got to go to another vote or something. I didn't read all your articles.
So instead of having a committee, I believe now, I'd assume now that since they can't have a committee, so that wasn't in my article, it was voted against today. But since they can't have a committee, they want the Liberals are attacking the Conservatives, for taking up the time in legislature to dig into Trudeau's We Charity scandal, and instead of being able to delve into, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something into the terms of issues that matter to Canadians. So something in that nature. But so he goes, so he goes and says that, but then he stops a committee which could have been separate from. It could have been separate from literally all of Parliament, and they could have done it by themselves and let the rest of Parliament do its thing. But instead, Trudeau's going to let them waste their time questioning them until they get their answers, if they even get their answers.
They won't. I've lost faith that it's such a disgrace to democracy right now. But I want to address something before we close off here. That's collectivism. No, that's not what I'm talking about. You can collectively argue for your charter rights. I'm okay with that. You can collectively voice them, and when somebody loses their freedoms, we can do class actions when they fall under similar things. That's the type of collectivism I'm talking about. Very, very important difference. All right. I am Greg Staley of Diverge Media signing off. We thank you for everyone joining us tonight. And on our other side, we have
Patrick Visser.
Thank you for joining us.
Media.
We'll see you next time.